Welcome to the Magic Hours podcast, the podcast where we discuss art, pop culture, and spirituality. I'm your host, Zoe Flowers, and I am so glad you're here. Let's get into the show. Welcome back, everyone, to the Magic Hours. I am Zoe Flowers. It is the summer solstice, so it's going to be a fun episode and conversation. And so I'm actually talking today with Liana, and Liana and I met. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and talk about how we met, and then just again the happy accident of how we ended up talking today, because we actually were supposed to talk yesterday, but my car was in the shop.
so you got too excited about your car.
I did exactly. I got too excited about my car and then got a flat. So here we are, and it all happened just so you and I could, spend our solstice together. But for you, it's in the future, so your solstice, you're at.
It's wild. Hi, yeah. My name is Liana. I guess I'll just start there.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I was gonna pause for a second, but first I'll actually, while I remember, let you guys know that I'm on Noongar country. I'm over here in the southwest of the Australian continent, which is I'm situated on Belia country. I'm in beautiful wetlands. It's actually the winter solstice over here, and this is why we were meant to meet today. I think but I did want to pause. I wanted to pause because I get like a puppy dog, and I can't help myself. My tail starts wagging, and all of my insides start vibrating, and I forget to be here. And I just wanted to pause for a sec. But I wanted to pause and just take in this little moment of gratitude of what brought us here.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't long ago that you and I were strangers.
I mean,
and
yes,
we have a whole almost sort of set of ancestry that's overlapping here that's brought us little footsteps.
Yes.
And I think it's always important to acknowledge, in the same way that we acknowledge land, that we acknowledge the ancestors. We have ancestors here from technology, you know what I mean? From the technology stream that brought us here, and then from the Missing Witches podcast coven that actually brought our paths over together. And I think massive shout out to the Missing Witches project.
Oh my God. Yes.
I think there's a confidence and a level of integrity that you can lean into when you really know that you're talking with the people that you need to be talking to, the people who need to be there listening, and they're there because they want all of the same things that you want. They want to hear the stories that they've been missing, and meet the people that they've been missing. And you've been missing from my life, Zoe, and now you're not missing from my life. And I said,
right.
So I wanted to just take a moment to sink into that gratitude and breathe into it a little bit.
Absolutely. So let's just do that. And let's take that breath. So let's just breathe in through our nose for a minute. Exhale out. And for me, even in just that breath, when I took that breath in, I felt sort of my tailbone just grounding even more. And you've already said so many things about the technology that brought us here, the missing witches that brought us here, our ancestors that brought us here. And when we think about that, one of the things that I can't really actually stop thinking about in this moment too is the freedom that we have to be having a conversation about witchery in public with our names and our faces and all of the witches that could not do that. And even in modern time, I mean, 10 years ago,
like 1,000 kilometers away. You know what I mean? Like it's real, and that's
Yeah.
why we do it, and that's why we
Yeah.
have to do it. We're
Yeah.
compelled, and it's beautiful. I think that if you feel that compulsion, that should be the goal. To know that you've got that support. I think ancestrally, because I think if you have that compulsion, it's in your DNA.
Yeah.
And it brings us. It's what brings us. This is why we have. I feel like there's almost like we could draw little maps over our little paths, and we're even be able to draw where we have our shared ancestry right here, just by meeting, by making contact with each other, and making a shared ancestry. This just is like so ridiculously beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. So tell us a little bit more about sort of who you are in the world. And I'd love to hear about, you talk about ancestors all the time, as do I. So I'd love to hear about your ancestor, the ancestor work and all of that. So yeah, let's get into who you are in the world.
It's funny. I thought about all of this because I obviously have listened to every one of your episodes of your podcast.
Thank you.
I know what goes on here. I know what goes on here. Long time listener.
Yes, come on now, long time listener.
So I thought, like, who am I in the world? And I'm like, I don't really know, even from whose perspective to assess that from. Like it's such a strange feeling. Because I know, I guess, who I feel like I am in the world. But then I think, like, well, who am I to others? Who am I perceived as? What am I perceived as? What is, And it's always like identity's always been a really interesting quandary for me.
Yeah.
And I think anyone who kind of has, lived in any type of body that, I think any human is really going to grapple with identity. If they're going to be honest with themselves, it's a hard thing to be a human, and to figure out what that means as you as an individual feeling human, But this is me, I guess, in that nutshell. Like, I'm always going to make things way more abstract than what they are. I'm the person in the world who they invented the boxes for because they needed to try and understand them. You know what I mean? I don't feel like one thing ever. I don't feel like, I guess that's a grace that I've extended myself now that I was never able to. But that idea that I can like slip into my own identity almost daily if I want to is just like a freedom of allowing myself to like be an animal. And that's like the one grace that I try to give myself every day. That's the one thing lens I try to view myself through first. The truth of who I am is that I'm an animal. And then beyond that, I'm a human. And then beyond that, I'm, a femme queer, who's, spent a long time of their life masking their ADHD and I'm trying to learn to figure out who I am even on a daily basis is really, really difficult, I think. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, just about the fact that we are infinitely complex, why wouldn't every day you possibly be a new person? You know what I mean? Why would your identity not change day to day? But I think that is me. It's complicated, needlessly complicated, the abstract, never answering a question with an answer. You know what I mean? I don't believe that there are, I don't feel qualified to answer that question even though it's about me. I feel almost hardly qualified to answer that question.
Wow.
Because I don't know, I think about that a lot, and I think there are lots of things that I do think about myself, but I'm always in a state of questioning that. I'm always in a state of questioning if I'm being honest with myself or if I'm being truthful about a situation. And that's the nature of growing, or kind of being in a state of growth.
Yeah.
Or being at least maybe receptive to it, I'm not sure, but like maybe earth energy, maybe that's who I am walking through the world. That's how I feel most comfortable identifying, is that I do identify with earth energy. And more that I learn about, astrology, I getting like some interesting pictures about that, even
Yeah.
ancestrally. But I'm an artist, like I'm a maker. I make a lot of things. I do a lot of things that includes a lot of different branches. It really depends on who you ask, what kind of artist I am.
Yeah.
But I'm a reader. I identify really highly with the idea of being clairsentient, or the idea of being clear in feeling, clear in. Well, I wouldn't even know, to be honest with you. I feel like I kind of just a sensitive person, maybe, what I mean?
Sure.
Sensitive to whatever message or whatever, you know what I
mean? Yeah.
But I always forget what question you've asked me now.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
For too long.
No, I love it because there's so many I'm like, oh, I want to talk about that. This sensitivity piece and this sort of clairsentient, and so maybe for folks who don't know what clairsentience is, maybe we should talk about the clairs.
Yeah.
So how do you experience clairsentience?
I think my personal experience more now, as I've been assessing it, because I think that there's an element that we all kind of go through our lives being these things, maybe when we're young, or when we're unrestricted in moments when we dream, or in states of being receptive. But the way that I kind of experience it, I suppose, is more like, I feel like it's my animal magic, it's my ability to tap into like instinct and like impulse, and like understanding that there is an intelligence in my body, that when I have an impulse to do something, that isn't something to be completely disregarded, that has value. And when you lean into those, it kind of unveils slightly more about how it feels in your body, and then what that message might tell you about that particular energy. And I honestly do believe that all humans have access to these clairs, I guess probably just to varying degrees of difficulty, or...
I think so.
I imagine, look, I can hardly be more, you know what I mean, sensitive than everyone else that exists on this planet, you know what I mean? I think there's so many of us that now we're realizing that, hang on a second, I think we've been kind of freaking magical as heck our whole lives, and we'd never really paid attention to a lot of that, because a lot of that intelligence is disregarded because it's non-imperialistic, it's non-measurable, it's not something that can be it's much more of that patriarchal kind of mindset of how to measure and quantify. But I do, I think the way that I would define clairsentience is just the idea that you can feel something I think it's just feeling, and I don't even know whether you need to know exactly why you're feeling that. It's about learning about the response to that sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? And I wouldn't even know how to distinguish that from like parking, or like deciding to walk through the back of my house instead of the front of my house that day. But I just start to do it. So I think, okay, well, I'm going to continue doing that thing. My body's in a state of taking me somewhere, and I'm going to learn, I guess what that is soon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I guess traditionally, I think they would call it like clear feeling. And I think that I've always experienced that with people. And I got that fused with being empathic. I don't really, I've had a lot of people sort of say, oh, you're such an empath. And I'm like, oh,
I don't know. I want to be that.
From, I don't feeling what you're feeling. I know what you're feeling. You know what I mean? And I've always had with people that, in terms of how I navigate it through my life, it's more of like that animal magic, just like work on your impulse, work on your desire. What is it you're being drawn towards? What does that then lead you to? And I think there's a type of magic that exists, in those little, when we listen to ourselves and we acknowledge that, like, that too has a certain significance or importance, and that's what usually leads us to some type of magic. I'm not sure. I think it could be different depending on how, you know what I mean? Because it's a felt sense, you know what I mean? It's so personal. It's got to be so personal, right? The whole experience. But I think it is this idea of feeling, like maybe messages run through centers that maybe you just have little open windows to. Even if you're more porous, for example, to something, you're going to absorb more. And some of that might just be like, like feeling something in your body that you need to move in a certain direction, and then you find yourself in a location that just brings you to your knees in tears, and you just cleanse out of your body the pain that you'd been feeling and repressed or something. You know what I mean? There are so many different ways that the body knows how to get its healing, or knows how to get what it needs, and it sends us all of the messages, but we make the narratives up here, and we don't have to learn to, we don't, excuse me, sorry, stumbling over my words constantly. But I think that we don't have to clarify feeling up here.
Yeah.
If it's a knowing that you, I mean, you know when you're thirsty, right? Usually.
Yeah.
You know when you're hungry, you know when you need to go take a shit. You know what I mean? It's like, and you know maybe when it's going to be not the easiest shit that day. You know what I mean? It's like we know these things. Our bodies know these things.
God.
You know?
Yes.
It's as simple as that. I think like people kind of complicate magic as if it needs to be this shattering sort of revelatory experience all the time. When you live magic, it's just like
every day.
It's natural. It's just nature.
Every day.
You know?
Yeah. I oh my gosh, I so agree. And I feel like for me, whenever I'm sharing a ritual with anybody, it's very, to me, very simple, very like no frills. Like it doesn't have to be, it can be this grand thing if we want it to like be that. Like if I want to put on the outfits that go with it or play the music or do all the things. It's more for me. That's for me. That's to get my mind, trick my mind into like, oh, okay, we're gonna go do magic. You know what I mean? Like it's for me to be like, hey, we're gonna get
it's
magic.
A ritual of the ritual. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're ritualizing ritual if you want.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
right. But it doesn't have to be that. And I love how you keep going back to the animal. I have a friend, Anna, and she always does that all the time. She's like, well, we're animals all the time. And
I'm like, never forget.
Totally, I know, exactly. And I had a friend, Dennis, shout out if he's listening, and he always used to say that too. And I used to argue with him all the time. But we're human. This is like a long time ago. But we're supposed to be above the human, you know, the animal instincts and this and that. And it's like, no, y'all are right. Like, yeah, we're animals, and to allow ourselves to be that. And when I think about the constant separation between we're humans and these are the animals, and this is empirical evidence, so this matters, and this intuition thing over here, it's just like, you know, something, but we don't know what it is, right? And so there's always this just need to separate. And I think that's why we don't, those of us that tap into our clear sentience or our clear audience, which for me is very strong. I can hear things very strong.
Does that scare you? I've been scared of that for a long time.
No, I love it because it's like, it helps me get parking spaces. Oh yeah, no, we can talk about it right now because I think for me, it didn't scare me at all because it always was like a lifesaver. Like, so for example, I'm thinking about when I was working, I was really young, and my friends were having a party. My coworkers were having a party, and I was all ready to go to this party. And I kept hearing, don't go to this party. Do not go to the party. And so I didn't go. And then come to find out, one of my coworkers was sleeping with my partner at the time at the party. So if I had gone to that party, I would have seen that. So it's always like a lifesaver moment. So I started to pay attention to it like really early. And so when I took, now it's like parking spaces, like literally they'll be like, turn here, turn there, wait. And so when I really started to pay attention, because they would be like, just wait. Like if I'm looking for a space. So I would just stop the car. And then I noticed that a car in front of me would just pull out and go. And I'm like, oh shit, like, so you're telling me to wait. So So it doesn't scare me at all
Mm-hmm.
because it always helps. And that's the one that I depend on the most, especially like when I'm doing readings and things like that. It's because I can hear them very, very clearly. Now, what used to freak me out, I went to this, when I first moved to New York, there's this guy, he wrote this book called The Book of Love and Creation. His name is Paul Selig, and he's a channel. And reading his book and doing his like affirmations that he has, or incantations really, all of a sudden I would start to get like these shakes. I don't know if you get them, like these uncontrollable like movements. And I'm like, oh my God, what is this? And it's like, yeah, that book for me was like a DNA restructuring. And so that plus Reiki really made me start to hear more and more and more and more. And so at first I was like, what is this? Because it became so frequent when I moved to New York and when I read that book and when I got attuned to Reiki. So I went to one of his classes because he was touring and he came to New York. So I went to see him and I said, you know, I hear voices and I want to know like where they're coming from. Like, are they good? Are they quote unquote bad? And he was like, it's, you know, that it's spirit because it's not like demeaning, which other teachers have said. So if it's like demeaning, it's usually like your fears or, you know, whatever, some kind of negative energy or your ego or whatever. And he was like, it's like a radio station. And so you just tune in to the station that you align with. So after he said that, then I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah, you're in control. I think it's like, I don't know, it's funny you mention that because like, it really does make me aware of how many times that has been true for me too, as in my audience, you know, like, but I guess that it's something that I've always wanted explicit information. Do you know what I mean? I've always had a desire to have extremely explicit information.
Same.
I think I just got to plug my PC, and I think it's like not plugged in, maybe just
okay. The battery. No, I love it. This is the beauty of this podcast. It's like I love that. Like I just opened the window. I love that real life happens on this podcast.
I think so. I think, you know, we're also in this kind of like phase. I think something out there in this zeitgeist of wanting to like be invited into people's conversations, you know, like we're all seeking community. We just want to like hang out with mates and talk about things we're interested in talking about.
Exactly.
That's why I listen to podcasts all day, every day. You know?
I do too.
It really does feel like refreshing company sometimes. Sometimes I feel like there's no pressure for me to be involved in the conversation. I mean, obviously it's different today, but in general, like that, I get to have intelligent friends or people who get to speak to really interesting people.
Yeah.
And I don't have to have any part. I'm not expected. There's so much of my existence has felt this like this almost expectant to have a response to everything or to have to be included or to have a conversation. Like at university, it's like one of those things. People know your voice because they hear you in lectures asking all the questions because the impulse is just there to like no one else is asking the questions. You need to know the answers. Exactly. You know, so you just end up being that person who fills all the airspace, it feels like, you know.
Yes.
And it does feel like that a lot of the time because I'll fill my own airspace all the time. You know, I'm talking to myself if no one talks to me. So and podcasts are great.
Yep. I feel like I've definitely freed myself from that a little bit. One, because yes, if nobody's asking the questions, I am going to usually be that person. But I was at a health food store. This is before the panorama. I was in the health food store and this lady was asking, and it's a health food store I go to all the time. Like we know each other. Like I cannot, like when I go in there and other people are in there, I get an attitude. I know that I'm not going to get to talk to Ani. Like I know we're not going to get to have a conversation because it used to be like, you know, when everybody wasn't going to health food stores. So I could go in there and we could just have like a 45-minute conversation. And like the only people that would come in, because they've been there since like the 70s. And it's like a family business.
Cute. Is this in Brooklyn?
Yes. Huh? Yeah. It's in Connecticut. And yeah. And so it's called Limbs. And so I didn't know the original owners. Like I just met, I think maybe the dad. I'm not sure because there's other people that work in there, but I've been going there for years and I could just have a full on conversation. Now, you know, people are healthy. They want to come in.
Everyone wants a fucking acai and
alkaline water and but like sometimes I don't even want anything. Like I just want to go in and just like have the conversation because for so long there just wasn't like people I could talk to about things like that. So anyway, long story short. So I go in there and this lady comes in and I can't remember what she asked a question about something and I had the answer to it, but I just got on my phone and went outside. I just got my phone. I went outside. I was like, oh my God, I'm changing. Like, because I was like about to say, well, you know, you can do. And I was like, Zoe, she's at a health food store. There are people here. They can answer her. You don't have to be the expert. And I just got my phone and I went outside and called my sister. I was like, guess what I just did? I'm changing.
Witness my growth, please. I love that. Though, you know, I have had so many of those wake up calls just recently because of like, I was medicated for the ADHD, and it was something like you get to experience kind of the idea of being able to function like other people, but you still realize all of the quirks that exist that you've been masking kind of your whole life, and you have to kind of detangle all of that kind of stuff. But like, that was a huge one, the idea and that impulse towards like filling silence. I'm like, hang on a second, everyone needs to breathe every once in a while, you know, like the whole conversation can breathe even for a second, you know. And that's been like a real blessing, you know, just to like learn to pause. You don't have to get back to everything. We're hopefully going to have other conversations in our lives with these people that we meet, you know, and if we don't, there's always been this sort of desire to get everything out. Maybe it was because I was scared I'd never get someone back into a conversation with me again. But maybe that's why they didn't want to get back into conversations with me.
You never know. We don't.
We learn. I'm learning even about our own obnoxiousness sometimes.
Yeah. Well, that's it too, right? Like, I'm like, girl, do you always have to be the one to ask the question? Like, do you always have to be the one to, like, surely your coworkers are tired of you. Like, they know that Zoe's going to say something.
I had a few experiences like this recently over like Mercury retrogrades where I lost my voice. And I was like, well, that's it. This is my lesson. Like, your voice can only extend as far as you can literally speak. And you're being told to shut up. So I had to shut up. It was great. It was wonderful. It was like being given permission to shut up. Having no voice, you know. Do you feel that sometimes being a talkative person that you're like, I don't have any choice. I have to be this. I am so compelled.
Yes, I feel like that all the time. And I was saying to my mother, like, because I used to get in trouble. I was one of those kids that I would get in trouble for talking in class. Like, that's the only thing I ever got in trouble for. And I got in trouble for it my entire experience in school because I just was always like, all the time.
Even when no one was listening, no one was talking to me, I'll
talk to myself.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'll be in the car talking to myself, responding to like YouTube or some podcast or whatever. I'm a communicator.
I think that is exactly why you and I are here today. Is because we have a desire to be heard as well. Like there's an element of like having to battle against that too as a person of like, I know that I have a desire to be heard. I know that there are some things I have to say that perhaps, you know, are interesting things.
Yeah.
Probably not as interesting to other people as they are to me, but like I have to share them with you. You have to hear about them, obviously. You know, that's my love language, you know. I'm going to tell you about everything I know.
Yeah. And if I'm in, I talk about my sister all the time. It's so funny, but she's like, she knows that if I'm uncomfortable, like there's certain places that I'll go around like family, and I won't say anything. I'll just sit there. Like if I'm completely silent, that means I don't want to be there. So, yeah. So there's like a difference, right? There's like, and that's what I'm learning about myself is like, there's a difference between like being in circle and being silent, because that's what's needed in circle with people. And it's like, yeah, you don't have to be the expert. You can just be quiet and be like in observance. That's something that I've allowed myself to do. But then there's another time when I'm silent, and it's when I don't want to be somewhere.
But I think that you can, this is where being people who read energy is a really handy thing as well. You know what I mean? Being able to kind of sit here and understand silence and our relationship to it as being different depending on how much we are engaged in that particular situation. Because if you say, if I'm in circles, you're engaged. You're making silence because you are making room. You're making space. You are listening. You are absorbing. You are holding energy. You're holding other people, you know. You're still doing something, and you're actually quite involved in that. And that type of silence is a type of peace. It's a beautiful silence. Yeah. And then you look at the flip side of that, and that silence is, I want being engaged. Yeah. Feels as though thing that I can engage with nothing. Yeah. You know? And I experience that with family all the time. Are you kidding? You know, this is where, you know, where we have formed most of our communicative relationship patterning with, you know what I mean, is the people who, you know, who raise us, or the people who are, you know, we're around during our, you know, formative years, are the people who have taught us how to communicate. And if we've learned different ways to communicate, or if we want to communicate different truths about ourselves that other people don't have the capacity for in whatever way, of course you're going to disengage. Why would you waste your energy? Do you know what I mean? Like, you're going in a power saving mode. You know what I mean? Right. Don't waste that energy, you know? Right. Yeah. And I think it's when we learn to manage it so that it doesn't become like a poison cloud that we're sitting in, rather. You know what I mean? It's like, exactly. And like we're witches, we know about the idea of centering. You know how to sort of look at these situations and recognize, like, oh, what do I, if I'm going silent, maybe I just like need to step outside for 5 minutes. Totally. Instead, you know what I mean? And like my silence will be better used outside. Maybe I'll see a bird. And you know what I mean? Like, it's just like I'll be able to observe something I really want to observe out here, you know? Like, right. Because I always had that issue. It was like not being able to maintain my own energy. It's like me wearing my nazar and just fucking evil-eyeing everywhere else when I'm feeling like shit. You know what I mean? It's also me having to recognize where because I've been so guilty of that, you know, like I think we learn those lessons because we've been so guilty of them, and we've been so affected by doing them, you know, and we're only capable of changing our own behavior, you know. Yeah. So how is our relationship to that silence, you know? I'm going to be silent for a minute, and I'm going to let you talk to me about that. Well, I'm passing that mic.
Thanks. I'm actually thinking about the solstice right now, and you being in the winter solstice, getting ready to go into silence. I mean, I don't know what the terrain is exactly where you are in the winter time.
It's so interesting you say that, you know, like it's because like everywhere in the world is going to have such a different relationship to these things, aren't they? Like, yeah, our different points of our year could kind of have almost identical energy. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
I've been to Scotland in the summer, and it's leaving winter here to go to Scotland in the summer, and then I've left the same climate to go to the same climate. You know what I mean? So it's like that strange experience. Because I am near the west, like I'm on the coast, so I have a really strong relationship to water, and I think winter solstice is like a really good time to be in touch with the water or be close to it at least. It gets real wet. We don't get snow.
Okay.
But I mean, who knows what climate change will bring? We've had snow creeping in from like the east over some of the last few years. So who knows? I mean, it's hard to say this as well. Like it's a changing relationship. You have to be attuned to what's happening around you, don't you?
That's right.
But yeah, please, I feel like you were actually onto a thought and I interrupted you.
Well, no, you didn't. I just thinking about here in the winter, it is, snowy, dark, cold. And so I've chosen to merge with that and allow myself to sort of follow that season or be in that relationship, like you said, and be in silence in ways that I didn't do when I was younger. Because when I was younger, it's like the party doesn't stop. Like we're going to the club, we're wearing heels in the snow, we're wearing mini skirts in the snow, we're 20, we're wearing crop tops in the snow. Like we don't care. The party doesn't. No. We're standing out in line in heels in the snow. That's what we're doing.
My fingers feel cold just thinking about it, and I just know that I've done it before, and it's like I can feel my fingers so cold.
Yeah, you'll get warm when you get in the club. So the way that like I fought against that, you know what I mean? Now it's different. Now I'm like, it's cold outside. I'll just stay in the house. I'll just flow with nature. I'll just do what nature's doing. Oh, it's spring. Okay. It's time for me to like pop back out. Oh, it's summer. Okay. Let's go.
And you just find that you naturally do it, don't you?
Yes.
When you want to, like when you want to be that in that relationship, it does sort of just naturally happen. You are like an animal living in that location.
Yeah, that's what
bring it up again. So
there we go. That's right. No, I know. Listen, I'm full on now. I've been converted.
Animal. I love it.
I've been converted. I have all these animal decks now. It's so funny. It's like, bring it.
But like we are attuned, even if we're not in our places of origin, we animals adapt real quick.
They do.
And if you're paying attention, even if we can only observe the world from our perspective, obviously. So like for some people, certain periods of the year are really horrible. Because of like seasonal depression, or or people who have chronic illness, or like people who have terrible allergies. Like even just like mild spring must be a bit of a pain in the ass. And it's interesting to like observe where you exist and how you interact. Like how is your body reacting with that local environment? Like you say, this spring has sprung, you start to feel that in your body. Sometimes even just like the day of, even if it's just a calendar day, there's this like energy change that you can feel in your body, And I mean, I've always been really attuned to that ever since I was a kid, but I used to associate it with things like, summer meant I was school holidays, like I was already telling myself stories about why I was feeling these things in my body. And like I say, pretty unreliable stories, when you actually sort of deconstruct it, and when you actually think about how it feels in your body, you're like, oh, well, of course, it's like, like there's more sun out. Of course I feel like I want to be out and about. Of course it's going against that feels, like you say, like pointless, we get to, it's almost as well, like you say, like we want to experience the things that we want to experience when we want to experience them, and nature just doesn't work that way, and it can't work that way. Like you said, rest. Winter just isn't for crop tops. You got like 3 other seasons, babe. Like we love crop tops. We want crop tops. Like
I have on one now.
We want to be getting warm in the club, but we want to do that in summer. Like it's just, there's a time and place, you know. It's about accepting that we're like, oh no, I only get to have this at this time of year or something, you know.
Right.
It's in that acceptance of limitation that I feel like we get to accept our own. Like, I need to rest in winter, or like I need to go to sleep, you know, I need to sleep when it's darker, or like just accepting that we, I feel like I just keep coming back to that word grace, you know, like giving yourself the grace of being, you know, even if animal isn't the word you want to use, you're like a living organism, you know, like it requires things.
Yeah.
And it's not going to work on a time that works for you. It's going to work at a time that it works. And we have our limitations, some of us more than others, you know. Like, we have so many other things to worry about. Like, just let your body be your body, you know, like it's something I'm still learning. And I feel like I try to learn that all the time. I've dissociated from my body nearly my whole life, you know.
Same. Yeah.
That relationship to the body is such a blessing when we access it, you know.
And I think that is why, well, first I want to say, I think that's the gift of witchiness, is getting us back into our bodies. And I feel that is why the attacks have always been and come on women identified people in particular, or anybody that is on that spectrum of femininity. It's because that witchiness.
I just wrote power down on this page, because I think to myself, like, that's the power. Like, it's the know of those things that allows us to do the things that we do, right? Like, to manipulate energy. You know what I mean? So
let's talk about it.
Being in our bodies and having access to the complete kind of like incredible capacity of our bodies for magic. We do it all the time, you know, like our whole existence every day. If you want to acknowledge that you can work magic through your body, you have to acknowledge that taking a breath is magical, right? Like, and we know this is a huge part. If you know that you are powerful just by breathing,
or just by like contemplating the blood going through your veins. But what about, like, did you ever have, as a little kid, I used to have these moments where I would be sitting on the like sidewalk and I would be intensely aware that I was sitting on the sidewalk. Like, it's like this hyper awareness, and it's still happen, but it doesn't happen as much now as it did. But it was
vivid reality.
Yeah, like maybe I was gone. And maybe like I was gone somewhere. Who knows? Maybe I was dissociated. Who knows? And then it's like all of a sudden I'm back in my body, and it's like I'm experiencing, like I'm actually having a thought, like, oh, I'm in my body. I'm looking at a tree. It's like this hyper, like you said, like this hyper.
I think it is. I think it is that awareness, you know, like, and like you said, it may even be the response to turning from not being in your body.
I think
like
so.
Really tense, because I experience this still quite frequently, you know, like it's a really weird feeling sometimes.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
If I am experiencing being alive and doing the thing that I'm doing and being really just aware of that, what was I doing? Like, why was I at what? You know what I mean? Like, there's
exactly.
And it's the most mundane things too, like you say, you know.
It's not that.
It's the most mundane things. It's not even like, oh my goodness, you know. Like, I mean, okay, you get it when you're driving your car and you think like, oh shit, did I drive through like 5 red lights to get here? I don't remember driving here. You know, that's right. I feel like that's autopilot.
Yeah, it's for sure.
But like when we're in those moments of like, I feel like almost like you say, like being dropped back into
dropped back into existence. Yeah.
Because I definitely, I've had those, like, you know, so when I'm putting on my shoes and I'm just like weirdly aware that I'm slipping a foot into a like a piece of fabric, like, and this is normal, and I do this all the time, but I'm just like really aware of the fact that it's
and like
and like aware
like you're
of
you.
And you know, I almost feel like I'd never had a way to describe this.
Same.
experience until kind of recently, when like I come to that same realization as you of this. Perhaps it is this sort of almost just awareness of being reintroduced to my body again. Yeah, isn't that so interesting? What do you think that is?
Listen, I don't know. I just like, I can see it like now. I can see like me sitting on the sidewalk on my street that I grew up on, and I would be looking up the street, and it was like I was seeing everything for not the first time, but just like this.
Acknowledging it for the first time.
Yeah, it was like weird. It's like, oh, this is paper, and I'm looking at paper right now, and there are these images on this paper.
You know, the way that you describe that actually really reminds me of some of the feelings of like psychedelics, of that feeling that a lot of people describe of like
Yeah.
just being really aware of reality and being like, oh,
Yeah.
I never really noticed that like all of the colors that come through on this particular thing, or you know, like
Yeah.
And I think that it's weird because I had tried psychedelics. Excuse me, not
Yeah.
right now. I haven't. I promise.
Yeah.
I've tried them in the last few years, and like,
Yeah.
it just made me really aware of how different I was already seeing the world. You know, like I was like, oh, this is what people are seeing when they're on mushrooms, and I just sort of made the connection that it's like, but I see a lot of this all the time. You know, like in a the sense of recognizing intensely complicated and beautiful things in the way that people do, you know, like having that sort of hyper awareness of my surroundings or of nature perhaps, or I'm not really sure, but even things like lights and colors, and you know, I have palinopsia, so I see a lot of really strange things sometimes, which is like an after image thing, you know, a lot of people get from neurological and optical sort of issues, but I don't know why I have mine, and I'm fingers
What
crossed
is that?
it's no neurological issue. It's called palinopsia. I don't know if you've ever heard of that before.
No.
So there's two different types. I researched this because I was sitting at my altar one day and I was like, oh my gosh, intensely, like crazy things were happening with the candles. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, but of course I'm always never satisfied with just like deluding myself. So I'm out there researching every possible thing. And so I looked it up, and it kind of fit what they were talking about. Was there's two types, and it's one is illusionary palinopsia, which I think is what I have.
Okay.
And then there's hallucinatory palinopsia. And so for me, illusionary palinopsia kind of manifests as like well, I mean, I see light differently. Like I see the full spectrum most of the time. So if there's a point of light, I will see the full spectrum around that light.
Wow.
Sort of auric, sort of not around people. I've never seen auric sort of fields around people, but always points of light. And what it is it's essentially after image. So if you see like for example, I've got like a written light in front of me now. Is I look at this written light and I stare at it for a moment, I can just take it over here.
Oh yeah.
And it will imprint on that wall, and it will get larger, maybe, and it will change color. Yeah. So you know what I mean? These are the types of things that when you lose your focus, which we do often when we're meditating. To the things that I think people you know, see when they're sort of hallucinating. They're getting almost like a window into how people like us see all the time, almost,
all the time.
Like it's
yeah.
And I think that it made me realize just like how connected I was.
Yeah.
You know, like taking it made me realize how connected I was, because it made me realize how situated in reality I was. Just like you say, this sort of like intense feeling of being embodied in that reality, in that moment, and very intensely aware of what I'm doing, what I'm seeing, what I'm thinking. It's all very clear. They're quite clearly. Maybe that's not part of our experience. Maybe our experiences are too like intertwined on a regular day basis.
Maybe.
We don't get the clear mind voice, and then the feeling voice, and then the observation voice. I'm not sure. Like, I don't know. I think it's really interesting to have these conversations, though, because in the same way that, like, you know, I've seen a lot of strange things in my life, that it's actually not that unusual. You know, like, we're having these conversations, you know, two people who met across the world who can agree that we're seeing the world differently to other people, you know, like, I've never had that sense of connection with anyone before. You know what I mean? In the sense of like being able to now be here in this world where we get to communicate with other people who think differently, who see differently, and we get to admit that openly to the world. Like you say, you know, there's that. It's a vulnerability that I think has made me so powerful.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Stepping willingly, you know, into this.
And do you have a specific magical practice or like folk that you practice with where you are? What is your practice like?
Well, I mean, it's quite interesting because I guess I never really like assessed it all that much, you know, like because it was just sort of like day to day. I feel like I've always been a baby, you know, like trying to practice magic, and completely unguided, like completely unaware of anything, you know. Like my last name is Lupasco, which is like the escu or ascu denotes like child of, and lup means wolf. And so I spent like up until I was like 23 years old, maybe. Like I was a kid who was obsessed with wolves, like just obsessed with wolves. That weird kid who was obsessed with wolves, you know. And like when I was 23 was when my parents told me that's what my name meant. You know what I mean? It's like that. Even when there is information, even ancestrally or culturally for like your heritage and that, it's just not really thought of as important to pass on, you know. And like these are elements of just like who I am as a person. That's my last name. That's my inheritance. You know, the one inheritance, really. You know, and like and here I was already connected to that notion, but like yeah. And so I guess in that way, I feel really strongly about all of our responsibility about teaching kids. You know, this is one thing. Like, I say teaching kids just because I'm a kid. You know, like. I've never felt like I've not been a kid, you know, like, I think that all of us kind of have those elements of ourselves that need to be talked to anyway, you know. We've all been separated from our ancestry. And I think you mentioned something before when we were talking about this idea of like, when we know our bodies and we know what they're capable of and we know we're powerful for breathing, well, that's where power is. And you said that, you know, like, of course this means those people are targeted that can access that power. And I kind of have that view for everything. You know, I'm suspicious of anything that anyone tries to demonize because I always wonder what it is that they're trying to conceal. What power are you trying to conceal from me? What stories are you keeping from me? And ancestry is power. You know, we know this. We know this because we know that our ancestry is animal and human. You know, I think it's a huge, like, sort of fundamental part of my practice is just the acknowledgement of like, I live on earth, I am a human animal, you know what I mean? These are the legacies that I am completely aware of. Like, everyone has access to the idea that they are a human animal. They live in a place, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I try to think about the ways that I had to DIY, construct my ancestral practice. And I think to myself, like, if I had known some of these really fundamental concepts, just about the fact that I've always been able to access my ancestry, because I am my ancestry, like my body is literally made up. It doesn't matter what cultural practices somebody had, that's not who they are. I am who they are. You know, and I'm exactly everyone that they laid out all those little stepping stones to get to. I'm exactly who I'm supposed to be, right? So like so much of my ancestral practice has just been trying to reorient myself back towards my own power by using my ancestors almost like a crutch. You know what I mean? Like, and being able to say, you know what, if I am, like, you talked about the hearing the voices and listening to the ones that are, what was the word you used? It was
like in alignment, like tuning into the radio station.
And it's like, I just kind of think to myself all the time, like, I don't know what death is. I don't know what life is. I don't know what any of this is. And that's the, like, the kind of beauty of being able to admit that I just know nothing. So why can't everything be possible?
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I don't know anything, then everything is possible, which means it just opens up all the channels
Mm-hmm.
for messages to come through. And so whatever, I guess, practices I get led to, I don't have any strict practices, I guess, to answer the question like properly,
Mm-hmm.
instead of going on my weird
No, I love it. It's all good.
But I you know, like my practice is primarily ancestrally focused, and I think the reason I say that is because my objective is to be a worthy ancestor. You know what I mean? Like I don't think there's anything else I can be. You know, I don't know if I can be on this planet and do anything more than what I can do. So if they want to guide me, I can't really think of anyone better who knows me better. You know what I mean? To support me in that.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps me develop a relationship and a trust with myself, because if I have to trust them, and I trust that they I have to trust that they trust me. You know, and it's been a huge part of my I guess my learning and my practice has mostly been around trying to really tune myself back into my integrity. And that's really the only compass I can use spiritually, is my integrity. And there's all been kind of constant dialogue with that, you know what I mean? And constant questioning what that is, then I don't feel like I can do wrong. I don't think I can do wrong. Whatever I do will come to some end if I can navigate it through a constant discernment, you know, constant discernment, constant questioning. I'm never going to be satisfied with delusions. My brain is just too, we get so bored with that, you know what I mean? We're always looking for truth, aren't we? You know, like we want to find truth, but I've only ever been able to come to the determination that I only hold my own truth. You know, I can't know fully anyone else's, but I can trust people when they know theirs, if that makes sense to you. You know,
Yeah.
I have so much more of a sense of gauging people's level of intelligence and wisdom through how much they know themselves. You know, because if you're the lens that you're looking at the world through, you've got to know that lens, right? Like, how are you going to know anything to be true? You can't know, you know, what color the lens you're looking through is. Like, is it tinted? Is it dirty? Is it scratched? Does it just like need that little, you know, like we got to be tending to ourselves. We've got to be tending to ourselves because I think ancestors demand it of us in a lot of ways. If the thought comes to your mind, I want to be clear about the sort of distinction between anxiety voices and cruel. You know, this is where we listen to the aligned voices, you know, the ones that make us reassured. Because like I say, you know, I don't know what happens when you die, but I don't imagine that when you're crossing over that barrier, that you don't drop all the shit, you know.
Right.
You know, like we're dropping the stubbornness of punishing someone to teach them a lesson. Our ancestors aren't going to go down that route because they know the positive reinforcement is going to get the message through faster. You know what I mean? They're not always going to be nice to you. You know what I mean? Like, let's be clear. They might be harsh, but they are never cruel, because it's not going to work to be cruel. You know what I mean? They're not going to get the truth of the message through to you by being cruel to you. And I always try to tell people that, because it's important for us to make the distinction between what we need to hear the messages that we don't want to hear sometimes. And they are going to come to you and they're going to smack you in the face with those messages. You know what I mean? Like, we have to respect those grandmothers out there that are like, just, you know, like it's just like this and you just have to get it done. We can't be sensitive to that. We have to be able to hear the love in that. You know, this is so much of the world that has taught us that angry people aren't loving, that angry people aren't righteous, that all of these ideas, that these emotions that make us feel uncomfortable don't have their own wisdoms in them. You know what I mean?
Mm.
We can have a mean grandma. You know what I mean? Like, she might just be a mean lady. You know what I mean? But it don't mean she doesn't love you. You know, like, doesn't mean she's not like cleaning up your wounds. You know what I mean? And
Wow.
stinging you in order to heal it. You know what I mean? We've got to be comfortable with the idea that people can be. People just going to be who they be. You know what I mean? I think that's
Wow.
the other extension that we give to us is that we've got to be who we are, you know, and there's all different kinds of wisdom in that.
Listen, I should have came to you before therapy.
Oh, we should have it regular.
Somebody should have told me that a long time ago, that people was just gonna be mean, honey. Because I thought everybody was
just,
Is that
and you know
true?
what, that was one thing that I have used to my benefit a lot of the time now. Is like, I used to be really scared. Like, I come from Christian upbringing, you know, and it was very much like people who feel spirits, you're feeling demons. They're not spirits. They're not your ancestors. They are demons, you know. So going to bed at night time, I'd be like laying in bed and I can feel things tickling my feet. I can, you know, hear things, this, and I can, all of this sort of stuff. So I am, you know, like rightfully pretty terrified. You know how I reframed that? You were talking about reframing with your sexy wig there, the sexy secretary reframing. Like the way I reframed this in my mind was I imagined a really old Baba, like an old Baba Yaga at the end of my bed, poking my feet with needles. Because she's doing acupuncture or some shit. But I just got to trust that grandma's looking after me. You know what I mean? Like, I've got to trust that the old lady's like doing it out of love. And I've just like relaxed into it. And I'm like, cool, grandma, just take care of my feet while I go to sleep now. And like, so I got this big, ugly, you know, old looking Baba Yaga at the end of my bed who would have been terrified me as a kid. You know, the thought of this old, scary lady at the end of my bed. And I'm like, nah, fucking take it away, Baba, go. Like, and I sleep so well with that, with knowing that like I can reframe the idea of being fearful of something to be like, that's my protector. She's scaring the shit out of anyone else who's coming out for me. You know what I mean? It's the idea of using like a gargoyle. You know what I mean? You use something scary to ward off the scary. Why not use it for yourself? You know?
Yeah.
You were scared of something, make them your protectors.
Oh, I love that.
So I got a bunch of demon protectors. Use what works, hey? It worked against me.
I love that. Yeah. When did you make that shift? Was this as an adult about the Baba Yaga?
Oh, look, that was probably like in the last 2 years. You know what I mean? Like, it takes a long time to like deep.
That's amazing.
Christianity, you know. I think if you've really been, it's not only that. It's like because you're living in a world that was built on the principles of a lot of these notions, you know. So you're like reinforced all the time, right?
All the time.
So like as soon as even if you step out of like maybe even the organized context of religion, you're still kind of confronted with all of those notions all day, every day, you know. But dude, it took me a long. Oh, how do you feel about dude? Sorry, I always check that with people. Like I use it all the time. I talk like a 15-year-old boy all the time.
What?
Dude, I don't know. Some people feel like uncomfortable with the term, like, don't call me dude. I'm like, oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, no, I don't.
I just like to double check sometimes.
It's so funny. No. I'm just wow. I'm just thinking about all the times that I was scared in my sleep, like when I would feel something on my bed or whatever. And now I'm like, oh, okay, I guess this is just my protector. We'll see if that works. Because I think that,
I mean, assess the energy, you know, like, you know,
yeah. It never, it doesn't feel scary. It's just me feeling like, did something just sit on my bed? Like,
I like to think of them like animals as well. Like I have like a kitty that comes around every once, so I'll feel like these little ones in my legs, and I'll be like, oh, they're just making bickies on my legs, you know, like the little cat baking biscuits. And
did you have a cat?
Maybe it's a dog. Nope, never had a cat in my life. You know?
Oh, okay. Okay.
So now I do in spirit, maybe. I don't know. It's a little imaginary cat friend I have.
Right.
Maybe it's a dog jumping on your bed.
Right. Maybe. I had pets growing up. Actually, the first time I had Reiki,
you need to tell me more about Reiki, because it's something that I had like put off for a long time, but I am thinking more and more about lately.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, so I love it. So I used to have this person in my life that was doing Reiki, come to find out, but she would never say what she was doing. She was one of those spiritualists that never wanted to share what they're doing, what service they're doing for you. And so, because I
yeah, try and get away with that now.
Yeah, right. I'm like, right. And I was always like, okay, girl, whatever, like, fine, whatever. And so, but she said that she saw like puppies in my energy when she was doing what I consider to be a Reiki treatment at this point now. And Reiki is like that. Like oh my God, when I first started doing Reiki, and I'll tell you, so we say Reiki is like acupuncture without the needles, because we work with the chakras, but we also work with different energy points in the body. But we don't have to touch. Sometimes we do. Sometimes we actually do touch the body. Sometimes we do it above the body. And what we're doing is just allowing ourselves to be a channel of universal love, energy, whatever people want to call it. We are not the channel. We have just attuned ourselves again to that energy. So they call it a Reiki attunement, when you actually become a person who can facilitate Reiki, because you're just attuning to the energy that we all have to heal. So, so the first time I got it formally, went to my Reiki master's
when you
house.
were told what you were getting.
No, exactly, because she would do these treatments on me, and I would be able to feel like, and I lived in Florida, she lived in Georgia, and she'd be like, just close your eyes, and I'd close my eyes. And these were the healing sessions, and I could feel like circles and energy and things happening. And I was like, oh my God, what is that? And she'd be like, don't worry about it. For years. Anyway, so
I can't stand. That's one thing I don't get. You know, like is going through like an experience. I don't think I could lay down on a table with someone who's like, just trust me, and I'm not going to tell you. Like, you know, I just don't. I want more information. You know, like it's my body. You're reading my body here.
Exactly. But we started as just like homegirls, as friends. Like I think we met at like an art event, and we just kind of clicked. So we didn't start out with her doing like these healing things, but then just from being friends was like, oh, you do healing work, I do, but I wasn't doing healing work formally. I was just like always just like this witchy person. I was into crystals and all these things, and we would talk about all these things. I certainly was not doing readings. Never thought I would ever. I didn't think that was something I could ever do. So I would get these readings and things. Once I started getting readings and things like that from her, and then she started doing this healing work on people, and she just wouldn't tell people what it was. Yeah. And then there was this other experience where I went to this person and I started floating off the table. And she just put a crystal on my back, and then I went back on the table. She didn't tell me what she was doing. Can you imagine? And I felt all these hands. And I felt all these hands on my body. It was supposed to be a massage. And I'm feeling all these hands. And then the next thing you know, I literally feel like I'm floating off the table, and then I get feel this crystal on my back, and I'm back. Wow. She didn't say a word. I never went back. I never went back to her. I was like, I'm good.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a lot of my issue, my love, has been that. Like, I don't know if I can be that open, because I guess that fear, you know, like just dropped like a stone from the middle of the sky, you know, like what?
She was just like, crystal, yoink, on my back.
And you know what? I have considered getting energy healing for a while now, because I know that there are quite a few things that I need to get to.
Yeah.
And also just because I've done so much work on my own that I know that there's more that needs other expertises, you know.
You should.
That feeling, I think it's just that feeling of like, I put it out there, to the universe, because
Yeah.
I really don't feel comfortable laying in front of somebody who I don't feel like if I don't meet someone through a channel like this,
Yeah.
that makes me feel as though I can sort of lay there and not be gendered and not be, sort of, I don't know, made to be pulled out of those states of receptivity. I believe people can heal even if they're prejudiced. Do you know what I mean? I don't believe magic is discriminate that way. People can do magic even if they're, racist, even if they're this, even if they're that. It works. Right. Magic works.
That's right.
But I'm not going to lay on a table with someone unless I'm sure that that person has had to assess their own experience in this world. You know what I mean? I want to go and see Indigenous, bi, POC people who have, or queer people, or neurodivergent people who I feel like can kind of hold my experience better. Yeah. And I think that must be like, you're someone who's gone and tried a lot.
Oh,
you know what I mean? This is where I'm like, it's that.
Yeah.
I value this perspective, before going out and seeking that,
Yeah, I mean, again, this was like a person that was in our sister circle. So, it's like a lot of us, we were just kind of experimenting with things. Well, she wasn't, because she had a whole spa, everything. Like, people went to her, people loved her. Nobody else said they had that experience that I had. So perhaps it was just like my energy. Bottom line is,
I also think, like, do you ever? Oh, sorry, excuse me, I'm interrupting.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you ever wonder sometimes, like, I guess there being like maybe like an understanding of why someone would be like so Seven of Swordsy about their practice, like, you know what I mean? Like there is that like element, you know what I mean? Like, I kind of get it in some ways, but I'm like, I just feel like as a person to receive something like that, that's one I can't, like, I have to know a little bit about what you're seeing or what you're feeling, at least, yeah.
So I think that that there is a thing there. This particular person, there was a thing around power and hierarchy. So, which I've experienced a lot with different people in my journey. So it's like they want to be here and they want to keep you, you know what I mean? So there's always needs to be a little bit of I'm better than you, or I'm better than everyone. There was just kind of that. Anyway,
and you probably find that everywhere, won't you? You know what I mean? Like, this is
it's
you'll
find
almost
that
the nature
anywhere.
of living
That's just
in
people.
As well,
That's just people. Well, and just people, whether it's capitalism or not, people are going to be that way. Some people are going to be that way. So that was just her personality, and I didn't mind. I wanted to know. It wasn't a big deal that I didn't know, right? Because also there's always been so much secrecy around magic and around healing. And again, you weren't, in 2000 and God, it had to be like 2004, 2003, 2002-ish. We weren't out publicly. Like, nobody was talking about Reiki at that time in Atlanta. I mean, no, I didn't learn about Reiki until I moved to New York, and that was 2012. So I was in a lot of circles with people who were doing a lot of things, and they weren't really talking about it. So her not telling me what she was doing didn't bother me at all, because we were friends. And she also just had that lens where it's like, okay, she just wants to feel like she's whatever. And that's when we became not friends, was when I was like, okay, girl, like, you're going too far, like, with the control. And that's when we became unfriends. But yeah, I didn't think that was a big deal at all. I did feel like it was a big deal when I rose off that table, though, because I didn't know her like that. We didn't have that friendship. And I'm coming to you for a service. I'm paying you. Like, if something happens while I'm on the table, you need to be able to say something. So for me, when I became a Reiki facilitator myself, I asked for my treatments to be very gentle, because I had one person in the beginning when I was first starting, and they said the energy felt very intense for them. And so for me, I like to go full on. Like, I used to go to New Orleans and ask to be possessed on there. Like, I have a whole story about how I went to New Orleans, got possessed. Like, I do a whole bunch of foolishness. Like, I just go hard, just in life, period. And don't ask really questions until it's a little bit too late. But as a practitioner, I'm like saying to my spirit guides and my Reiki guides, okay, you all need to be gentle, because I never know where people are when they're on the table. And I never want anybody to be scared, because this particular person was highly sensitive. So the energy felt very intense. And I do work with, we have Reiki guides and we have our spirit guides. And I work with Mother Mary sometimes. So sometimes I'm calling people into the space depending on, like, what's happening on the table, what I sense that the person needs. If a person is carrying a lot of things, we're going to have to do a little bit more work to give them that relief. But I want it to be gentle, because I never want people to feel the way I felt on that table, because that scared the shit out of me. Like, I wasn't into like stuff like I am now. It's like,
I think as well, like it makes you wonder as well, like, maybe your energy was responding to something, and maybe someone didn't know what to tell you was happening, because they didn't even know what the hell was happening. You know what I mean?
I think so.
Like,
it's
almost like a being pulled and called towards that work. Maybe, you know what I mean? It's like, something's gonna, like, you think you're coming in for just this, but it's gonna be bigger than what you think.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
Wow.
And so
I've
you
had
don't.
so few experiences with other people. That's been my. So much of my issue has been able to tune out other people in order to hear myself correctly. Because I just can't negotiate my own energy with other people sometimes. Like, I have so much trouble assessing where those barriers exist energetically. And oh my goodness, has that pulled me into some shit in my life? You know what I mean? Like, just being unable to distinguish that. And so as soon as I realized that I needed silence and to be away from people, I became a very solitary practitioner. You know what I mean? Like, because I was able to actually just hear myself. And I think, like, the only thing that I've been craving outside of that has been able to be held space for, in those settings, because I've always been the person to hold that space for other people. And it's always been at that expense of my energy, you know what I mean? And being able to lay on the table and say to someone, like, hey, like, like, feel around, you know what I mean? And feel okay about that. Yeah, I have been looking into that so much more lately, and I think I'll definitely be talking to you a little bit more about that, I think, because we'll have to book some services, I think.
Yeah. And the good thing about Reiki is that it can be done through the computer. Obviously it's best in person, but we've had to do what we've had to do, even before COVID, we would do things. But I've been very grateful when I've been able to get on people's table and actually receive. Yeah, I'm doing an interview. So yeah, I've been very grateful to have had that, and I've also had to really get better about my own cleansing of my own energy too, because you're right, like, I definitely have accumulated a lot of energy from mixing it up with folks in the way that I have. And so I feel like the pandemic has been good for me in the sense of really pulling me out and letting me be in that hermit.
Well, you mentioned, like, mode. It was the first time you'd stopped in, like, such a long time,
Like,
being able to have that, I think, is something that I just relate to on so many different levels as well, but also from that sort of, I guess, that, like, neurological level of, like, my brain is never in cease. It never ceases, you know what I mean? There's never a point where I I struggle very much to get to any point of ease. You know what I mean? And I think this is something a lot of people kind of don't recognize in ADHD, even in themselves, is that hyperactivity. People think it is all physical. I mean, I tell you what, for me, it's very physical, but like when that physical channel is shut off, it is all internal. And it's like you lay a bed at nighttime and 10,000 people are having a conversation in your mind, you know, and you're trying to listen to that spirit message that you set a spell out for, and you're like, come on, please. just the one message tonight, please, you know. That I've had to be so pulled away from other people. But I really do, I feel like I've broken down a lot of those trust barriers that I had with being able to be held in space with other people, you know, like, and I've only learned that by allowing myself to be held by other people, you know, by booking readings and by really seeing that other people had, you know, real insights and perspective to offer me that, you know, it's made me feel confident to kind of keep pursuing, trusting people to do that for me, you know, because I've been so skeptical, you know, like I really have like, you know, you go from like the Christian upbringing, which is basically like God is real and anything else that exists that isn't God is evil. And it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense, so that can't be true. So then nothing can be true. Maybe nothing is evil. And you go through this deconstruction stage where you've forgotten that you're still trying to look at it through a measurable lens, you know. Reiki can't be real because how can this and this, you know, it's not even so much that you're looking at it as though it's evil anymore, you're just looking at it as though, well, that can't be real. And it's like, I mean, now that I'm at the place that I'm at, I'm like, everything can be real. And it's beautiful, and my whole existence has completely changed when I gave myself the grace to be like, well, you don't know shit, why would you assume you know anything? Like, everything could be possible. And it's like a beautiful gift I get to give myself. And then the world has opened up, you know. You channeled through so many messages on your podcast. On this podcast you have channeled, you know, like I got so many. I was peeling an orange at a time when you were giving someone a reading and telling them about how they needed to eat more oranges, and so I'm like in the middle of it, I'm like, no way. Because I'd said at the beginning of that episode, I literally took a photo of myself. I have to send it to you. It's very funny.
Oh my God, please send it. Please send it.
Really? You know,
Oh my God.
I have actually have a few messages, pictures I'll have to send you because they're really funny.
Oh my God.
I actually drew a little doodle of your when you were reading out your poem on the Missing Witches poetry special. I did a little doodle when you, and I've been looking everywhere for it. I've got to find it. It's so hilarious. It's so hilarious.
I gotta see this doodle. I gotta see the doodle.
I'll turn it into a proper picture, I promise, and I'll send it to you. But yeah, I definitely will show you this doodle as soon as I find it. But yeah, like I oranges have been a huge thing lately. You know, like I have been to an orange and tasted my grandfather earlier this year. And I was like, oh shit, he's going to die real soon. You know, like there was just all of these wild things that have happened with oranges. And yeah, like, I don't even know where to begin with any of that. Oranges, let's just say, have channeled through quite a few messages this year.
Really?
Yeah, actually, the wild story of how my grandfather did die, you know, this year is pretty wild as well. You know, like it was... I wouldn't even know where to begin with half of this. You know what I mean? It's like this is so much of the struggles that I have with my mind is like the ability to make things one sentence that feel like they should be a whole book. You know what I mean? Like trying to tell a story and I want to include absolutely everything in it, you know?
Okay. As you're talking now, I'm going to look at the birth chart that you sent me. Yeah. Don't tell me anything. Just keep talking. Keep talking. I'm going to look.
Okay. What's so funny as well, because like earlier, like I said, I bit into an orange and I tasted my grandfather and I was so sure that, you know, I was like, oh shit, he's going to die soon, you know, and he was back in Romania and my dad doesn't have any relationship with him at all, you know, and for good reason for my dad. But, you know, my dad has recently opened up a lot about things, about his sort of earlier life. And it was the weekend that I went and stayed at my dad's place just to go hang out with him. We took Magick a lot. And like, he's been teaching me a lot about like his psychic experiences and things like that. Things that he was never really open about before he left Christianity. that relationship really opened up, and it was really beautiful. And so I've been nurturing that by just like going and spending a lot more time with him. And I set up little interviews where I'll just put my phone out and record, and we'll talk about stuff. He'll tell me about, you know, family members and stories and things like that. And you know, this weekend that I had gone and stay with him, you know, he really opened up about a lot of things that he had never really opened up about before. And I felt something. He channeled in his grandmothers. All three of them were in this, you know, in this room with us. You know, I showed my dad my tarot cards, something that I had never done before because of that sort of Christian upbringing. No matter what these things are dealing, you know, and he's examining each one of them and putting them down, and he's asking me questions that I would have never expected him to ask. And I could just feel the grandmothers were there, you know, like I could really, really feel them. And
wow.
There are so many women that have loved my dad, you know, and in lots of different ways, you know, like to be true. But he is. There have been so many, especially older women, who have just seen something in him, and they're the ones that came to me first. These are the ancestors that came to me first, you know. Felt the meal my dad was talking about his father. My dad's father was quite abusive. This is, you know, really, really, that ancestral trauma is real, you know, really real. And he was opening up in a way that I'd never heard him talk. And he's telling me this story about lightning flashes and how lightning flashes had given him some sort of message from spirit, and he had seen something, and repressed memories had given information, you know, and it was all this really like quickly. And as he's speaking, this lightning cracks across the sky.
In real time?
And, yeah. It was like, we just sort of both paused. None of us acknowledged it. And he just kept going. And then he ended up sending me home. My dad's an artist. He sent me home with like a wood burning that he had done of him, Ethan, you know, an imagined sort of like scene. And it had this lightning strike across. And he's like, I don't remember why I did this. That was 20 years ago. He sent me home with that art piece. And the next day my mum calls and she said, oh, did you know that Tataya died? And I was like, when? And it turns out it was basically around the time my dad and I were having this conversation. And it was about him. And the story was really intense, you know, in terms of what I felt like my dad was able to release at that moment by telling me this in his own words. It felt like this portal, you know, like that death portal allowed some sort of healing for my dad, like the last possible healing that, you know, that he could kind of get out of that relationship, which, you know, was a very awful relationship, that in that moment he died, you know. And my dad and I both strangely knew it. The next day my dad called me and said, did your mother tell you that your grandfather died? And I said, yes. And I'm like, did you know that he was going to die? And I was like, I felt like he was going to die. And my dad said, yes, love, I knew he was going to die. And I was like, it's just strange. Like, we were both sitting there in this strange agreement that we had both known in that moment that he had died, that we had both paused after this lightning strike and just continued on with our business. And it was just like that weird connection, that moment that I was like, oh shit, yeah, now we are family. Like, we were, whatever energy we were reading together at that time, we just kind of were like, oh yes, and we continued because it was just natural in that moment, if that makes sense to you. You know, it was like we were in a communication in energy, and it's just like more and more opportunities are opening up like this, you know, and I feel so blessed, you know, to really, you know, I never thought I would ever be able to have these conversations, you know, with my family in general about spirituality, you know, but to have my father reveal so much of himself, you know, so much of his psychic life. You know, he saved my life. I died, and it was only him that, you know. Yeah, this is what I'm telling you, babe. We're gonna have to have so many conversations.
We're gonna have to have a part two. 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 Or just have private conversations.
Yes,
for you
let's do that. Yes. We have to set an itinerary.
We do, because this time difference here is it's so late where you are, but you're a night owl, right?
I am.
Yeah. And so, wow.
I know there's just so many small stories like that like I wouldn't even know where to begin. You know what I mean? It's like I really have always felt like I needed to write a book about him specifically. Ever since I was a kid, I just had this weird idea. I'm like, I'm going to write a story about my dad.
Yeah.
And now that he tells me all of this, I think, oh my goodness, it just connects so deeply to everything that I'm interested in now. You know, like everything. And I realize I must just be kind of meant to tell that story. You know what I mean? Like I'm meant to at least tell his stories. You know,
Yeah,
all the gifts he's given me and all the cycles he's broken on my behalf to be able to live the life I live now. I owe that story to be told in a way. You know what I mean? I don't know, even if it's for myself, you know, because I wanted to hear it and I only get to hear it now. Yeah. You know, like yeah.
And I'm so fascinated by your last name as well. I'd like what I'm like did they share where your last name came from? Do you have an idea?
Well, the interesting part about that is that like I did my ancestry tests, you know, and they sort of they gave me like geographical locations in the Balkans, you know, Baltic tribal clans were where we came from, and what's interesting is that the localized clan around where my family would have come from were the Dacha, which are wolf worshippers. And yeah, so this is what I mean. This is what I was saying. Like how much that could have revealed about my ancestry had they told me that that's what my name meant. You know what I mean? It's such a small detail.
Exactly. Like the smallest.
And this is why I really believe in telling people everything you know. You know, like tell everyone everything you know.
Tell everybody everything you know, because you could be giving them life-saving, literally, information.
And I'm so firm in this now. This is why I never shut up about my ancestors. You know, like I know what they've done for me, and I know what they can do. Like I have just this unbelievably strange love. I mean, I love your ancestors, Zoe. Like I don't know anything, but I love them. You know, like even every part of them. Do you know what I mean? It's because we erase the human from ancestry all the time. We erase the fact that these people were complicated. They were nuanced. They were humans. You know what I mean? They were the older siblings who took care of the whole family. They were the you know, single mother who had to do sex work to make sure that their daughters got an education. You know what I mean? To be able to afford that education. There are every single person that we get to be but were persecuted for. You know what I mean? Like
I do. I do.
And they is just like by heart, I can't describe what that feeling of openness in my heart feels like, and that love to
in hard times.
All of them, yes.
In hard times where there was like, you know, us, we have an expectation of joy, happiness, what we deserve. Like
they could have, like, it's expecting to live. It's expecting to not walk out of your house and be, you know what I mean? Like it's
if you have a house.
You know, like exactly.
Like we went to a friend of mine years ago, went with a friend of mine to El Salvador to stay with her grandmother. And so funny because every morning we would get up and we'd go outside at her grandmother's like sort of patio in the front of the house. And we would go out there and meditate. And so her grandmother came out one morning and was, you know, like, what are you doing? And, you know, my friend was like, espiritual, you know, meditación. And her grandmother was like, ¿por qué? Like, why? And then she was like, I can't even remember what my homegirl said, like to make us feel better or something. Her grandmother just like looked at us and just turned around and went in the house and was just like, you girls, like you're ridiculous. Like, you're ridiculous. It's 11 o'clock in the morning and you're out here burning incense. Like, I mean, she just was like the privilege of it all. Like she didn't say it, but like her whole body was just like, wow, must be nice ladies to be, you know, like at your age and just to have the freedom to just roll out of bed and, you know?
And I mean, this is like everything, you know what I mean? Like, and it's funny as well because it's like a large percentage of the world do not have even
Exactly.
that, you know,
This is
like
what I'm
the
saying.
larger percentage of the world, you know.
This is what I'm saying. Like,
Mm.
she grew up between El Salvador and San Francisco. I grew up in Connecticut, right? And so here we are, two, BIPOC ladies, and the grandmother, lives in El Salvador,
And you know what? And you know what? Like that as well, if you separate that image of two BIPOC ladies who have the time and the energy
Exactly what
and
I'm
the
saying.
resources to do
Yes.
this, we're living in different spheres, you know.
This
and it's
is
like
what
we
I'm
celebrate this, we can celebrate this. It's like it's all real,
And
it's all truth, you know.
yeah, and I'm sure that even though she was like, you girls are outrageous, like, congrats on like de-stressing, because I think my friend was saying like stress and like, but I also feel like a part of her too was like tickled by us, and like all of our like witchiness and like all of the things that we're doing. But it's just so funny. And so one of my ancestors, well, a lot of my ancestors came through because I went to this medium when I lived in Florida. And so my grandmother came through first. And it's so funny because I happened to have her ring on at that time. So she came through first, and she actually apologized for being so harsh, because she was that harsh grandmother. Like, she was also like a very good cook, whatever. She was great. But she was, stern. But she said the reason that she was like that was because I was such a sensitive child, and she was trying to like protect me from the world. Like, she was trying to make me hard. It didn't work. Like, that's just not my.
But so many generations were trained to do this in this way.
That's what she thought she had to do.
I know that your experience is going to be hard as a Black woman. You know what I mean? And I'm going to make sure that you're ready for that.
That's
in the way that I know how to prepare you.
In the way that she knew, right? And that just gave me such. And then of course my father came through with just like pure humor, but
aren't they so great? I love how much of a sense of humor. Like, so many people forget the humanness of that. You know what I mean? But there's so much sense of humor out there. You know?
He came in with humor and apologies as well. But and that was very helpful, that to humanize them for, what they did while they were here.
And it's like that acknowledgement that we get to change when we die, that we don't have to stop, and we're not this static image of something and the things that we did in our life, that we have the opportunity to kind of do better when we die as well. I think that's it's almost like, I imagine that would be a real urge for a lot of ancestors, to have those moments of realization and be like, oh, shit, like, I really need to communicate that I know better now, and that I'm sorry, or that I know that I could have done something differently, or I see you better now, or I understand this better now. And I imagine that'd be like a pretty strong compulsion. I think I would want, like, if I had done things that I can see that there would have been a better way, that I would let someone know that might have impacted. I think that I would have a really strong urge to want to come back and deliver that message. You know what I mean? Of like, I'm sorry, I know better now. Like, I'm sorry, I'm trying to do better now. And it just, I guess maybe it's people like us that kind of understand the value of hearing that from the dead. But that sort of seems a little bit superfluous to a lot of other people, this sort of concept of like the dead learning, because it's like, well, they've already impacted us, they've already hurt us, and then they go, but a lot of them are willing to take accountability, and I think so. Yeah, some do. Work is really important. Like, we give them the opportunity to, if you want, even have that judgment moment. You know what I mean? Of like being able to reckon with the life that they lived. And I think that the ones that are ready and the ones that want to, you know what I mean? Like, I think we do. There is a part of us that owe them that. Not personally, depending on your own personal capacity, your own relationship, your own everything, like, you're the only person who can make that call. I often feel that it's my responsibility. And I think it's because I am sitting in this massive point of privilege, you know, in so many regards, you know, that once I recognize something that I can do that allows their healing, I know I'm also healing myself by doing that act. So by recognizing it, I try to incorporate it into my little list of responsibilities towards that. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, it's a way that relationship can remain reciprocal, you know, that we're not in this, like, I'm not just getting healing through this relationship. I'm not just walking over to my ancestor altar and crying every month or something when I'm having a breakdown, you know, and filling up their glasses quickly to say a prayer, you know, to quickly get something done. It's, I allow them the space when I'm feeling certain things to say, like, who else has felt this way? You know, like, who else feels this way? When I'm feeling so broken and I go to my altar to cry, I'm inviting everyone else who understands that feeling to be there with me. You know what I mean? Because it's in my bones, it's in my blood, it's in my body. That stress, that tension, that everything that needs to be released is not just mine, you know?
Yeah.
And so I try to do that. That's one of the practices that I use ancestrally, is that if I have the capacity to hold certain ancestors, I'll invite them if they you know, if they can resonate with the specific thing that I'm dealing with at that time, you know, and invite them to come and offer either wisdoms or to come and kind of bask in some of the healing if they need it or if they can, you know. And it's just that small service that you feel like you can give, but it's really all that's asked. You know, all that's asked is communion, you know, like for you to be there and willing to meet them. That's all that really a relationship with your ancestors requires, you know, is that willingness. And I think that we know this, and this is something that has been really, really, you know, sort of big amongst people who sort of practice magic or, you know, people who are involved deeply in spirituality or healing work. But the rest of the world, it amazes me to see how much a lot of this information is lost, you know, like, and I think about how much it's helpful, you know, just to like be aware that I come from somewhere for a start. You know what I mean? Be aware that I have, you know, like that my genealogy is like a 4-dimensional creature. You know what I mean? And that I've moved in time more so than I've moved in space. Do you know what I mean? In that sense with my ancestors. I don't know. I think that that's something that I would love to make sure that other people understood better. You know, I do have that, even if they don't want to do it spiritually, even if they don't want to do it magically. You know what I mean? You can just do that by being a human every day. You know, like
I think it's just so important for people, you know, for Black people in particular, it's really challenging on the one hand because the ancestry, the way it's been marketed, comes with a lot of shame, and I feel like a lot of people cover that up with like intense Christianity. And so then you have that, oh, that's devil worshiping on top of it. And it's really, we really do ourselves a disservice when we don't at least acknowledge them. Like, I don't live at my altar, but I have one here. I have one in my apartment in Brooklyn. I give them stuff. I don't really ask them for anything. I probably should.
Definitely try. Why not?
Really,
you know what I mean?
I don't know. I just don't really ask them for anything. I don't know. I think probably because I don't think they really are into magical stuff anyway. So it's like,
it's
I give them.
But it's
I don't. They're not really. Even with the medium, my father. She said my father was kind of like in the background, like, what are you doing? So I give them things.
But what about like ancestors from like 6,000 years ago? Just, you know, like 20,000 years ago. Like,
yeah, it doesn't have to be blood, but mostly I work with my spirit guides, and yeah, I mostly just work that way. I know I should do.
It's just a thought, you know. I like to think about it like your ancestors are whoever you want them to be as well.
Yes,
like,
definitely.
Remember that you have a lineage of like living on this planet. You know what I mean? Like
definitely,
the elements are our ancestors, the mountains, everything. You know, we know.
Yes,
this. And I think like the ability to ask, I think, is like, you'd be surprised about how many of them want to give. I think
You're
maybe
probably
if
right.
there's just that moment, you know, like I was like
Yeah.
about myself. If I was on the
Yeah.
other side of that, I'd be there like this. Come on, Zoe, ask me for something. I
Ask
want
me
to prove
something.
that I'm on your side. You know, like I'm the cool ancestor. You know.
Yeah, I don't really. It's so funny how I don't really. Yeah, I dance for them every once. Like I'll play the music they like. I'll give them a cigar and do that.
Hey, that's good
But when,
shit. You know, like this
but
is
I don't
some good
really
shit.
ask
Yeah,
for
yeah.
like. Yeah, yeah.
Ask them to
Yeah.
dance with you. Come dance with me. That's what you have to do.
Now
Come
that's
dance
cute.
with me. Yeah.
I like that. I like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's just their time. You're just asking for some of their time, some of their energy. Just come dance with me, you know, like.
And it's come back in the day when I would get readings all the time. It would come up that's why I started working with them, because they were like, they want to work with you. You know, they want you to work with them. Da 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 da. But yeah, I won't be asking them for stuff. Just give me a parking space.
Yeah.
Just give me a parking
Just
space.
the important stuff. Just give me a parking space.
Just give me a parking space.
No,
I do need my house though. So you know what? Mountain ancestors, most enlightened ancestors, you want to help me with this house. But I also, the shamanic practice that I've been engaged with for the past 3 years has been about shedding a lot of ancestral heavy energies. So yeah, so that's the work. So Shasha, the other person that's in Australia, the work that we were doing is called dream planting. And we do a lot of shedding of it's a lot of dream work, which you know about, because didn't we talk about the last time we talked, the lady who went to Australia and studied with the indigenous people, and they put her in the mud and she wrote this book, something in the dream time, read.
I want to hear all about this. I wish this was a conversation we had. I can't wait to hear about this.
Okay, so this was a book that one of my mentors gave me years and years ago about this white lady. She came from here, I think, and from the States, and she wanted to study or do something with the indigenous people. And she came, but she was too Western. She just had too much of the Western stuff on her. So they like stripped her naked and they put her like in the dirt to like cleanse like the capitalism and like all the stuff off of her. And then they took her through all of these rituals and she wrote a book about it. And it's when she came to Australia. But it was something in the dream time. But I say all that.
Look, I think we've talked about the dreaming. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and
the dreaming. Yeah.
Yeah, read something. I don't know. Read dirt in the dream time. I don't know. But I'm looking as I'm talking to you.
My understanding of the dreaming is you know, like as this sort of cosmic space, you know, like that kind of liminal space of you know, that's something that you know, is talked about even a lot in like Noongar legend around this land. Like a friend of mine, actually, I'll have to send you through some of the artworks that she had done. Ilona Maguire is like a Noongar artist here that I went to school with, and she did this beautiful display of like Noongar dreaming stories. She did them by coordinating drones in the sky to tell the pictures and the stories. I am going to send you a YouTube video of this.
Oh my gosh,
because
please.
It is like so magical, honestly, so magical. It's one of the most spectacular things I've ever seen in my life. But to actually be there, like, you know, in front of like the grandfather ocean while I'm being taught about what that landmass and what that specific area meant in my legend, you know, is like just a kind of gift that something that, I don't know, my education here never afforded me. You know, I'm living on this land. I've been living on this land for a long time, and I've been learning, you know, from the wrong people, you know, and then
same.
You know, it's exactly that, you know, and I felt so privileged to have been like, well, also that's my mate, you know what I mean? Like I went to school with this person, but just like she is taking off right now, you know, like telling like cultural stories, you know, like as an artist, it's really, really important to like, I don't know, just respect game, you know, like Ilana is just killing it, you know.
Yeah.
And I have to show you these videos. I think I sent them through to a couple of other people. I can't remember who I'd sent. I'm literally always bragging about everyone else.
I
actually had a list of people that I was like ready to shout out to get, you know what I mean? Because I'm only who the people that I've learned from, you know what I mean? Like I only know what I know because of everyone I've learned from.
Exactly.
And there's just so many cool people.
Exactly. Well, I'm excited. I want it, and I wonder if they'll want to be on the show. If there's anybody else who you think that we could have conversations with, because this. Okay, I have your chart. Is there anything that interests you about your chart? It's great.
No, I guess that I'm like, I guess empty houses. There's so much empty houses.
Oh.
I guess is what I was confused. Like I just.
Well, I have those too.
Yeah. What is it? Like I guess it's more like,
yeah.
What is,
well, they're not.
I guess what's the sort of thing that, is it that there's something that's required in that space, or is there something that, you know, I guess I just never really understood. And I'm quite new to astrology in general.
Oh, okay.
I feel like I picked it up. In its essence pretty well. But I guess when it comes to things like that, like I'd only really looked at my natal chart maybe 2-3 years ago or something like that. And so even just the idea that houses, you know, have certain significance. Is something that I can't like, keep in my active memory. You know what I mean? I can't actually keep that in my, you know.
Got it.
Yeah.
No,
but
they're not empty.
Really, anything that pops out, like anything that you think of that pops out.
Yeah.
I mean, earth energy is pretty obvious.
Yeah, and they're not really empty because you do have signs there. You just don't have planets in some of them. So, yeah. Is the time here? September 20th.
It would be at
27th degree. I love it. So, hang on. I mean, Taurus looks like it's. So I would say that the houses where you have a lot of things happening, like the 10th house. So your 10th house is pretty lit up. So the 10th house is what you'll be known for in the world. And having Pisces in the 10th. And Pisces is your moon as well. Wait, no, Aquarius.
I don't think I've got any Pisces in my chart at all.
No, Aquarius.
yeah.
I'm bugging. Aquarius. So Aquarius moon.
I guess that's one I've always been confused about is generally my moon sign, because I like.
Yeah.
I feel everything else. I get sun and rising as in like for myself, but as Aquarius' moon, it doesn't necessarily. I'm like, I just never really. I don't know. Maybe I don't really kind of understand it as a moon sign. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Aquarius as a moon sign kind of feels unusual to me.
Well, there's lots of Aquarius moons. I feel like I was speaking to an Aquarius moon. I feel like the interview I did yesterday, I feel like she was an Aquarius moon. Yeah, I think she was an Aquarius moon because she was Taurus sun, Taurus rising, and I think she was an Aquarius moon, I think. So your moon sign has the final say. You'll relate to this because the moon represents the primal aspects of our personality. And so having that Aquarius, Aquarius is the innovator. Aquarius is about the collective. Aquarius is the humanitarian. Aquarius is about freedom. So for me, that's like your wolf energy right there is like that Aquarius moon. Whereas they run in packs, they travel in packs, and they're also primal. That's the most primal part of you is the moon. And so, whereas the sun is like the most basic part of the personality, it's like, okay, fine. It's like, that's where the sun was when you were born. It's your personality. Fine. Your ascendant is how you're seen in the world, but the moon has the final say. That's like your unconscious drives, your dreams that you don't share, like your unconscious motivators, the things that you try to keep secret. Those are all the moon. So having that Aquarius there could also be like some of that separation, that needing to separate, because Aquarius can be kind of like the you can't sit with us sign. Like I'm not like other girls. Like, yeah, I'm not like other girls. I'm not like other boys. Like that's like typical Aquarius energies, right? But again, also that humanitarian aspect. Very much.
You know what's
And
weird?
so,
I think I got confused about it because in my mind I've always associated Aquarius with Jesus, just the concept, you know, because I know that it's a very, there is like this kind of tangential idea of like age of Aquarius, this person who is heralding a new kind of, or questioning a religion, you know what I mean, and trying to this, that, and the other. It's kind of, I don't know, I've always associated, that's why it's confused me maybe.
I mean,
because I was looking at it more as like emotional, you know, rather than like, you know, and the way that you sort of describe it as being more like connected to, like you say, that much more natural, animalistic, primal aspect is, you know, is definitely makes more sense for me, I think. Yeah.
Well, the moon you were seeing as emotional, or Aquarius?
Yeah, like just as in like as more. I guess I've always like looked at it even more so as like you know, like whatever governing the emotional body. And I always just sort of thought to myself, like, Aquarius doesn't really seem right for my emotional body. You know what I mean? Like, I guess because it's never felt as organized as what I imagine Aquarius would be.
Well, I mean, it's the moon, so there are going to be emotions there. I would say again, raw emotions, primal emotions. And so there can definitely be some contradiction here, because with an Aquarius being air by its nature is detached. Air by its nature is cool, you know. Traditionally, it's also ruled by Saturn. And so that's where you're going to get like the Aquarius that can be very stringent, very controlling aspects that people who get to know Aquarius really well get to experience that controlling nature that they have because of it traditionally being ruled by Saturn. And so with this again being in your moon, being in the 10th again being like what you're going to be known for in the world, you know, could be this art aspect that we have here of being a little bit different. Again, because Aquarius is going to be a little bit different. So creating or even presenting in a way that's just a little bit different. That's just like, you know, doing your own thing, going your own way, bucking the system. That could be something that you're known for. Let's see. What is that sun sign giving? I mean, and then we've got Virgo, so you have Libra in the 6th house, which is interesting. Damn, and you have Venus in the 6th. Wow, that's really interesting. So the 6th house has to do with family, and the 6th house is Virgo, and the things you do every day, not family, the things you do every day, your habits and things like that. And so having that Libra and the ruler of Libra in the 6th house is really interesting to have that that Venus in Virgo. So I would imagine that there would want to be some refinement in the things that you create.
Virgo, sorry.
Hmm?
I don't think I have a Venus in Virgo. I don't think.
It's here in the 6th. Oh, my bad. Oh, wait a minute. We have the same placement. Oh, wait, no, Libra and Mars. Hold on. Let me put mine.
Because I know I've got Venus, or Venus in Leo, sorry.
Wait, hold on. Let me see.
And Chiron Leo.
What am I looking at? Hold on. Getting my glyphs. Hold on. Let me close and go back in. I'm going back in. Okay, now I'm back in. Okay, so let's talk about the Libra first. Libra in Virgo. So Virgo is about the things that you do every day. It's about your habits, but it's also about service. So this could be where the justice comes from, where the wanting justice comes from for the collective. That also links to having the Aquarius moon, that wanting for justice. And that Mars in Virgo is like, you'll fight for that justice if you have to. You're also not going to be above fighting for your habits, your structure, the things that you do every day. And you could also experience some like conflict, because Mars is also about separating, because Mars is fire and Mars is about initiating, but Mars is also like the god of war. And so it's like, if people try to like interrupt your schedule or like how you think, like how you need to do things, they might have a little bit of a problem, like a boss. Like if you had like a supervisor or something like that, that's like, you have to do this, and this. You might have some, you might have some,
no one else will have me.
some issues. Yeah, for sure. You might have some issues there for sure with that Mars in Virgo. Absolutely. Yeah, nobody's like going to be telling you what, like you need to do what, but there could also be volatility there, because you might not also want a set schedule. There could be some like conflict here, because it could be like almost like explosive, because you want to go and be fire and like initiate things, and it's like, no, you need structure, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do that. And then having that Libra there
for sure.
Yeah, right,
I
because
think
then
it's
you
a
have that
necessity
Libra
for Libra, you know, like I think it's more of like I need the Libra more than,
to
you know,
balance
because
it
of that.
out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, to balance it out, because that Mars in Virgo, it's like, yeah.
You know, one thing I always think about is like, air feeds fire, but fire feeds on earth. And I am so earth that the way that I overwork myself, like physically in my physical body, is like just burn or crash, you know, like, and it's that, you know, like 100% or 0% sort of idea of like, I work until my body breaks, and then the body gets rest, you know what I mean? And it's where it's like trying to tell me to get this equaled out in some way, you know, like I've got to figure this out because I am not getting younger, you know, and no one else is stepping in to parent this kid, you know, like I have never been able to work out the structure for that, you know what I mean? Like the structure for that. So that's something that really speaks to me, I think, you know, like that's something I can relate to, that resonates for sure.
I was trying to see where your where your Gemini was. And your Mercury, because you know that's
my
a lot of that.
Virgo.
Shoot, I can't. I keep closing the thing, the email. There you go.
My Mercury is in Virgo in the 5th house.
Let me see. Oh yeah, there we go. There we go. I mean, but you just made it with that Virgo.
Yeah.
You were almost a Libra. You almost was with us, girl. We almost got you. We almost had you,
they
but
sucked
then
me back.
You kicked us to the curb.
Y'all seem more fun.
Well, we are.
I am one. I can vouch for it. Like, we're not that fun.
You almost. No. That's so the 5th house. But this is good. So the 5th house is ruled by Leo. The 5th house is about your inner child. It's about your creativity. So it's actually better that you have that Virgo in the 5th, actually. I mean, to be honest, honey, because it's like me, it's like my creativity, like I want to eat a sandwich or watch YouTube or something like that. But you having that Virgo in the fifth, it's like you've got that, you do have the structure. Like when you have to sit down and do what you have to do, you're going to do it. So that's actually really lit to have that there.
I almost feel in service to it as well, though. You know what I mean? It feels almost like, now that I say it out loud, it almost feels like that Virgo is acting in service to that Leo. You know what I mean? Like, of like that creativity and that, you know what I mean? Like it's the one thing that I feel like I can actually bring something into the manifest world. You know what I mean? It's
for sure.
It's really the only way I know how to do anything. It's why it's so hard for me to describe.
It's nice.
My experience with art is because to me it's just so integrated into like everyday experience, I guess. You know what I mean? And maybe allows that, you know what I mean, a little bit better than the scales, or the sort of I don't know what I'm doing this with scales, but you know what I mean. maybe that structure does aid me.
And what you got going on? So my favorite house is the 8th house. What you got going on in the 8th house?
Empty.
Oh, okay.
Empty. Let's see. That's what I mean. I guess that's what I was curious about. It's just these like little blank spots where everything else is so jam packed,
Mine is like that too, though. Mine is like that. I've got like a stellium in the 8th house and the 9th house. So they're pretty stacked. And then I have some just other places that are just like, the sign is there.
Not this lifetime, like maybe next lifetime.
Exactly. So do we want to do a reading before we wrap? Because I do want to let you go to bed.
I will definitely have to call it after that. But you're making me very excited, and I definitely want to have a little, just a couple little tastes.
Let's do it. Well, I mean, we've been on the phone for 2 hours, which I feel like we did the last time.
I think we did.
Yeah,
we're just too good at this, I think.
We are. Okay, so what do we want to read on?
Maybe looking into that structure is a good one for me then. Looking into like the creative structure. Yeah, it would be really, really good.
Okay. So the way we'll do that is we'll do the focal first, and then we'll do what to embrace and what to release. And we're going to use the Crow Tarot. So do me a favor, and as I'm shuffling, just go ahead and close your eyes and just say your name 3 times out loud.
Liana Lupasco. Liana Lupasco.
And so we're just going to invite Liana Lupasco's most enlightened ancestors and spirit guides into this conversation to provide the information, confirmation, and inspiration that we're looking for specifically right now around focus. And we're also going to say intent. Zoe Flowers. And I invite my most enlightened ancestors and spirit guides into this conversation to provide Liana with the information, inspiration, confirmation that is needed at this time. Thank you. What you trying to do? Are you going to fall? Okay. All right. Got it. Okay. What do we have? We have another focus. One more focus. Thank you. Wow. This came up yesterday with a totally different deck. This is so interesting. So, first of all, before we get to the remedy, they want us to talk about what's getting in the way. So we have 5 of Cups. So one of the things that's getting in the way is focusing a little too much on the past, because we also have the 7 of Cups. We've got the 5 of Cups and we've got the 7 of Cups. So cups, we know, is emotions. And so if you see our dear crow here, our dear crow is looking at the cups that have spilled. having their back turned to the cups that are full. And here it's like so many distractions, not what cup to, you know, to actually pick, what emotion to actually focus on. So that's what's happening. It's like going back and forth between the past and then, oh my gosh, I have so many choices. Oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. And then feeling sort of triggered or activated from this space of not knowing what to do. And it's like, oh, that reminds me of the last time I didn't know what to do. So it's like going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. What's the remedy? So this is going to be a state of mind or a picture or a feeling to drop into before you begin your projects, etc. So what is the state of mind, or what is the imagery? Because they're going to give you an archetype, which is interesting. They're going to give you an archetype. Reclamation, soul retreat. And does this not look like Reiki? Is this not exactly what we were talking about? Is this not exactly what we were talking about?
I feel like I'm being shoved towards this. You know, like I said, they're not gentle about it. They've been really, so that's why I really wanted to know about it.
So it's like this image. I'll take a picture of this and send it to you.
It's beautiful.
Maybe you even want to like create.
They look exactly like the channels all over the body, don't they?
Yeah. And it's like, maybe you want to just look at this, put this picture somewhere where you'll see it, or maybe draw something in response to it. This is about reclamation. And so this is about, and you see there's also almost like a face here. I've literally never seen that before.
Oh,
that face.
That's the first thing I saw. You know, that's so interesting. That's the first
I've
thing I saw.
never seen that. Wow. Oh, so now I'm seeing that it's the
They're
breath.
literally laying hands as well. And they're also
And
laying
it's the breath.
Wow.
So it's also like working with your dream time more. It's almost like seeing your work while you're in this state.
Oh my
Does that make
goodness, that happens
sense?
all the time. Yeah, I think that's the issue, is that I can't hold it once I come out, if that makes sense.
It does make
That's
sense.
a lot of the issue. It's almost like
wonder
dream
if-
residue. It just falls away, you know.
I wonder if you can, when you wake up, if you can just like journal or draw or doodle whatever it is, that residue that you can catch, because this is about reclaiming. And this has been sitting here at the bottom of the deck, and even when I shuffled it, it's still here. It's like the present. So it's like firmly coming out of the past and past distractions, and being in this present time, and reclaiming who you are now, reclaiming who you are today in this moment, even if you don't fully have a grasp on it, if that makes sense. Like even if you don't have to have like a firm identity, but it's like moment to moment to moment, there is a need to decide fully that you're here in the present, and that you deserve to be here, and that your art and the things that you're doing in the world deserve to be here as well, if that makes sense.
It really does. Thank you, Zoe. I think these are things that I've been thinking a lot about lately, you know, and like there are sometimes those things that feel like uncrossable barriers until they reach the barrier of your mouth and you speak them out and you realize that there are quite a few options. You know what I mean? Like, but being able to say that to somebody else, somebody who can feel that and channeling something, you know what I mean? Is like it.
And there's something about when we had that conversation about dropping into our bodies, maybe that's why we had that conversation. So it's like dropping into that hyper focus and reclaiming your presence here. Let's see what the birds have to say. And it's kind of like that's the only thing that there is to focus on. We got the finch. New opportunities and choices are opening to you now. Claim them.
I feel that right now. Like being here right now is evidence, I feel like.
Yeah. And it's like a part of claiming is reclaiming. So you've got claiming in here twice.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
In the present moment. In the now. I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that. Anything? And they have one more tarot card. One more. Yeah, they're like, we're here. We're breathing into you. We're giving you life every day. Just like, be fearless with it.
That courage has definitely been something I've been asked to step into, but it's a new concept. You know what I mean? Yeah.
That's it. But it's definitely needed. And then, oh, you can't. I'll do it in a minute. Okay. She can't turn her television on. Hang on. It's gonna fall. This happens all the time. My little background. Okay. Stepping into the courage, yes. And then we have the Queen of Pentacles. This is what happens when you claim what?
No, sorry, that's one that comes up all the time. That's mine. That's the one they send me, yeah.
Yes.
Every day I ask them. And they'll send them to me every day. Yeah.
Well, here we go.
It comes up constantly, and it's one of those ones that has come up and it's been like, bitch, this is you. Wake up, it keeps coming into that, you have this capacity, you can be this,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there we are. We have the Queen. She has all of her things. She has the resources that she needs. It's Earth, which you are Earth. And what did you have in that 10th house again? I forgot already. Lord have mercy.
10th house is Aquarius, is it? I have
yeah.
And I think my Saturn maybe.
That's right. Okay, so your moon. Thank you. So yeah, so that's you.
It is. Yeah.
They're right. That's why you literally have the moon in the 10th house, which is ruled by Capricorn. Pentacles is Capricorn, Virgo. So there you are again. I mean, Earth.
I've got so much Capricorn as well in my chart.
Yeah. So Earth, right? So that's Earth. So that's your Taurus. That's your Virgo. That's your Capricorn. And so this is you at your core. But the thing about, well, I can speak to Capricorn because I have a lot of Saturn in my chart and I have a Capricorn ascendant. We never feel like we're doing anything. We never feel like we're doing anything. The Capricorn is like, who cares? Nobody cares. Keep working. No one cares. Keep working. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Yes.
And so then we take on that, oh my God, you're right. Nobody cares. I'm not doing anything. I haven't accomplished anything. And so it's like, that's why we have to do the soul retrieval. Because that Saturn will lie to us. That Saturn, that heavy Saturn, those Capricorn placements will lie to us and just grind us to a pulp and make us just think that we have to just work and work and work and work. And it's like, no, we're going to stay in the present moment where the sun is shining, where we're opening up to our opportunities and claiming that we are the Queen of Pentacles. We have everything we need. We're never going to not work, okay? We're going to work, but it's like, come on. yes,
it's
we
like
have to.
learning that there's power in those moments has been really powerful. You know, like you say, there's power in the work, there's power in doing all this stuff, but there's also power in just dropping back into your body after dissociating in that dizzy work period, and really remembering that you're there.
Yeah, I can do. Yeah, because one thing Capricorn people with Capricorn placements and Saturn placements can do, we can work. We know that. This is where it gets a little tricky. Finding the value, right? The value in all of the ways that we express ourselves. So, yeah, that's what I have for you. And the second house is about value, right? It's ruled by Taurus. And so it's like, what do we value? So looking at your second house as well and just seeing what you have there and understanding that, you know, okay. Yeah. So you're going to go back and forth with what you value. That makes sense. Yeah. You've got duality there. Yeah. That makes perfect sense. So not beating yourself up about it and just understanding that it is what it is.
You know, that seems to be a pretty resounding message that's been coming through lately. It's just like, it's chill. Don't worry. Everything just is as it is. It's going to just go where it's going to go.
Yes.
Ride it.
Like our 2-hour
call. I love you,
so
Zoe.
Fun. Oh my gosh.
I could keep talking, but I need some sleep.
We could just go on forever. And
I do love you. It's such a blessing, though. I really appreciate you inviting me. I really can't wait to have more chats. Can't wait to tell you about how I died. All of that business.
Oh yes. We have to do that. Okay, we're gonna have to over text. We'll have to figure out when we're gonna have our next conversation.
I love that.
And then we're gonna just do it, you and me.
Yeah.
Because I want to hear all about that too.
I love it. I can't wait to hear so much more from you too, my love.
I know. I have to tell you my stories of almost dying too.
Intrigue and mystery as we leave today. I love it. I love you, Zoe. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. And so how can people get a hold of you?
Oh wow, I never even thought about that.
Well, if people want to follow your work and things like that,
well,
how can they do
I've
that?
been using Instagram primarily for visual arts work and poetry work. And that's under Iubato Dikopachi Wolfchild, which I will type out and I will make sure that that's available because I don't think anyone's going to remember that. Otherwise, you can search Liana, Liana, HLUPASCU, and you should be able to turn me up on Instagram.
Okay. Alrighty.
I'm so
Thank
bad
you
at that
so
sort of
much.
Stuff. I'm gonna work on it. Maybe I'll even put some more stuff up by the time this ends.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. I hope that you enjoyed this very special solstice episode. I'm going to put this up right away. And this is Zoe Flowers, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.